All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for watching this video. My name is Michelle Vacanis. I'm the co-founder and executive director of the Colette Louise Tisdale Foundation. This organization was created in memory of our daughter, Colette, who died at 9 days old in May of 2018. Our mission is to improve outcomes of pregnancy, childbirth, prematurity, and infancy, as well as aid in the grieving process. And we do that through financial assistance, education, and advocacy. Our financial assistance program, which is our most well-known program, I am talking to you in May of 2021. And since we launched in September of 2018, we've helped over 620 families nationwide. We've hit 39 states and given away more than $600,000 in financial assistance. As part of our education platform, we are also relying on some experts, in this case, Brianna Town, who is going to talk to us about nutrition and pregnancy loss. And I'm so excited that Brianna's here with us. She's a nutritionist and a mindset coach focused on maternal health and supporting women in repairing their relationships with food. She has a master's in nutrition from American University, as well as numerous trainings and certifications in intuitive eating, yoga, neuro-linguistic programming, hypnotherapy, and more in order to best serve clients on a wide range of health issues and needs. Brianna currently lives in Colorado with her 4 children, husband, and Great Dane puppy. And Brianna, you're going to have to send me pictures of your puppy because I have an old dog and puppies are just us. So, but I thank you so much for being here and for doing this. And I'm going to let you kind of give an overview and a presentation, and then we'll do some questions.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. He doesn't look like a puppy anymore is the only thing. He's, bigger than me. So, but it is lovely to have a little big puppy around. Yeah, so thank you so much for having me. Like you said, I work with a lot of women in the maternal health sphere and a lot of women who are dealing with pregnancy loss, be that a miscarriage, a loss right after pregnancy, or abortion. So we do a lot of care in those areas. And there's a lot you can do to support your body. There's a lot of changes that happen in that stage of life. There's a ton of hormones fluctuating through your body and changing. There's, the blood loss to think about, and you're losing a ton of iron and just mass from your body. So replenishing all of that. And then, things like rest and social support are so important as well. So the first thing that I always address with a pregnancy loss is iron. So like I said, you're losing blood either way. Even mothers who haven't lost a child after birth are bleeding, right? We're losing a lot of blood, and we need to replenish that with iron intake. So blood, iron, that's most of what that's made out of, right? So increasing your iron intake through food. Most of the women I work with are plant-based mamas, and really the best way to heal most of the systems in your body is through a lot of plants. So when I'm talking about iron, I'm typically talking about it through, let's eat some foods, some plants that contain a lot of iron, instead of just, okay, let's go eat some cheeseburgers. Because we also want to make sure we're not harming the gut microbiome as we increase our iron intake. Oftentimes people think iron, they think okay, I'm going to eat some steak, I'm going to eat some cheeseburgers, I'm going to eat, all this meat. And yes, that has a lot of iron in it, and it's not supportive of your gut and your hormone system, which is huge. Most of your serotonin comes from your gut, that feel-good hormone. Your hunger hormone comes from your gut. And most of your inflammatory system, it's all related, right? So when we put a lot of meat in our bodies like that, it just creates a lot of stress on the gut and takes away from all of those other systems in the body. So you might notice being like sluggish and moody and all of those things. And especially after a pregnancy loss, like we're not interested in going down the like extra moody, extra hormonal route. So in increasing your iron intake, we look at plants typically. So that's like your leafy greens are going to be great. The darker, the better. So some like purple kale or some really dark kale. Swiss chard is wonderful. Getting some like arugula is great. Arugula and kale are in there, that cruciferous veggie family, which is really supportive for hormone balance as well. So that's cauliflower, kale, broccoli, arugula, bok choy. All of those things are going to both help with that iron intake and also that hormone balance, right? Excuse me. And then making sure that we're with an increase in iron intake, and also like beans, lentils, seeds, those things contain enough of iron in them as well. So using those things. And when we're eating foods that have iron in them, we need to be aware of like other nutrients that can kind of help or hurt the absorption of it. So you could be eating like all these, leafy greens, all these plants high in iron, but if you're also having a lot of calcium at the same time, you're decreasing the amount of iron that's actually being absorbed in your body. So separating your iron intake from your calcium intake is huge. This, especially when your iron is coming from mostly plants, it's so important to make sure it's being absorbed enough and properly for your body to use to help replenish what you're losing. And then on the flip side, eating your iron containing foods with vitamin C. So having some bell peppers with your leafy greens, or having some, we put a lot of like blood oranges or orange slices like on salads to kind of increase that vitamin C intake that helps with absorption. So that means that your body is basically able to use it better and use it for all its needs. Another thing to look at when dealing with pregnancy loss is bringing the uterus back to its pre-pregnancy state, right, to its non-pregnant state. So the uterus expands obviously quite a bit during pregnancy to, house a baby, and getting it back to its non-pregnant state, toning the uterus, and then also toning the pelvic floor. Not only is it physically beneficial, right? We don't need that anymore. We don't need that space in our bodies anymore. So helping to bring it back down, but it's also a mental and an emotional thing too. If you're looking down and seeing, it's an external visual trigger, right? So if you're looking down and seeing like, oh, I still look like I'm 4 months pregnant, oftentimes that's because your uterus is still in that expansion mode. And that can cause a lot of internal mood, stress, emotional conflict that's just not necessary right now, right? So I usually recommend some red raspberry leaf tea to help tone the uterus. It helps tone the pelvic floor as well, and it helps with some hormonal balance as things are kind of shifting and not in its normal state. I say normal in air quotes because like most people don't know what normal even feels like, but getting it back to a comfortable state, right? And then on top of that, making sure that we're focusing on rest, not jumping back into things. The pull of it is so real. After my first miscarriage, I was taking a couple classes and at the local university, and I went back to school the next day and was sitting in my philosophy class, and halfway through I was like, I need to leave. I cannot be here. This is not okay. So giving yourself the space and the permission to rest, not only does it like help your body get back to functioning properly, but also like we've been through a traumatic event, you know, it's traumatic, and whether that's like big T traumatic or little t traumatic, it's all trauma. And rest is so so essential to helping to bring that kind of back down and not let it control you. um and it doesn't have to look like sleeping for 3 days. A lot of people hear rest and they're like, oh, don't have time for that. But it can look like active rest. It can look like reading a book. It can look like watching your favorite show on Netflix. Like it can look like going for, an easy walk with your dog or just with yourself. It can look like baking. I love baking. It like calms me, it grounds me. It's like you have to have all your ingredients, and it's like a zero sum game almost, where it's like it has to be right. And I like that structure. So like things that fill you up but don't drain your energy, all of that is rest. Um, and then some movement, right? Some gentle movement or any kind of movement that feels good. It depends on obviously where you're at, and how much physical healing you have to do. But even like gentle stretching, maybe some gentle yoga, maybe going for a walk, maybe it's going for a bike ride or something. Whatever, one, feels good, and two, is safe on your body. Just getting the blood moving, getting that energy moving. A lot of times when we are in this really low state, there's a lot of energy that kind of gets trapped in our bodies and um, trapped inside, and we need to like move it out, right? I have dance parties a lot in the kitchen with my kids because I need to move the energy. I need to move it out. I like, if I'm having a bad day, I know that, jumping up and down and dancing in the kitchen is going to do more for me than, sitting on the couch or resting. I need to be moving that energy out of my body. And that's so, so supportive, not just for like, okay, let's build some muscles, let's get some blood pumping, it helps with your hormones and it helps with your gut and it helps with all these things, but also your mood and just feeling good about yourself. So whatever kind of movement feels good. I say movement instead of exercise because often we think of exercise as like some like big hard thing we have to like push for. And that's not it right now. That's not what we're looking for. And then the last thing is finding some kind of support group, be it like a friend who's been through the same thing, or finding some kind of really supportive online group, or finding, a group in your community that offers, a support system. Once you start looking for these things, they kind of like pop up and you're more aware of them. And I feel like once you start digging, it's like, oh, there's so many options, there's so many places for me to be and get support. And maybe that doesn't look like a group or even a friend. Maybe that looks like a therapist. Maybe that looks like really being open with your partner. Maybe that looks like, going deeper and finding a psychiatrist. And maybe that looks like medication. And maybe that looks like, a deeper professional support. And all of that's fine. I'm the first one to say, like, I have been seeing therapists for years, and I was on an antidepressant for years. And it all kind of stemmed back from my miscarriages. And I needed a little extra. I needed a little extra support. It wasn't enough to like go to a mom group and like talk to them. It wasn't enough to just talk to my therapist. It wasn't enough to just have my husband on board. It wasn't enough to meditate and eat all the plants and like exercise, sometimes it's not enough, and that's okay. And there's a lot of shame around getting help in that kind of professional way, but there shouldn't be. It's totally necessary and normal, if that's what you're needing. So that's my kind of quick rundown of a handful of things. I don't want to inundate people with too much,
Yeah,
because
no,
there's so many different avenues you can go down, but this is kind of like, okay, let's start here and build back up.
yeah, that was great. I think I also miscarried before losing Colette, and it does take a toll on your body, and I lost a lot of blood, and you know, when I miscarried, I miscarried on a Wednesday evening, and Saturday I hosted in my home my sister's bridal shower, and kind of was like stuck into doing it. And I look at pictures now of the bridal shower, and like I don't look good, right? Like I look pale. I look,
Yeah.
I was bloated. I was, like everything was kind of happening. And so, like an event that should have had some great pictures and pictures I really like any pictures I'm in, I don't like,
Mhm.
because of that. And and unfortunately, I think, uh, the message is sort of like, is kind of contradictory about miscarriages, right? Like it happens to everyone, yet nobody talks about it. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of that like twofold dynamic of like, wait, what's going on here? And it's really sent home with very little guidance and
Oh, yeah.
direction on what to do. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate a lot of this, doing this. I also, by the way, feel like I used to have, I used to say this when I was younger, it was like, there's no problem too big that can't be at least lessened, if not solved, by dancing around the house.
Yes.
So I totally agree with you on that. And I really, understand that. So, yeah. So, some questions. You talked about, there's always kind of loss of blood,
Mhm.
which yes, makes sense. But a lot of women might have what's called like a miscarriage, where they're going into a doctor and then there's just no heartbeat. So they might
Mhm.
not have had any bleeding. Um, would you say still in those cases, there's that same loss of iron?
It depends on like that's how both of my miscarriages ended up, and there was still a great amount of blood
Mhm.
loss after that. Um, and so yeah, it depends on what's kind of coming out. And most people aren't getting enough iron anyway,
Right.
so there's really not a lot of risk involved in like upping your iron intake. I'm not recommending going out and taking a supplement unless you've had a blood test done and you actually know you need one. Um, but most people are not going to see any kind of adverse effects from eating more foods that contain iron, for sure.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And you mentioned, and that was one of my other things that I was going to ask you about was, you mentioned supplements. And I think like that's often like a view, all of us sort of end up defaulting to like, oh, I'm low in this. Let me, get the vitamin for it. And those are useful in a lot of cases. Like you said, a blood test that shows you might have a deficiency, those kinds of things. Um, but why do you advocate a little bit more for food over going straight to the supplement?
So I always food first, right? Food first because 9 times out of 10, you're able to get enough from food. Supplements should be used to fill gaps
Mhm.
for as long as needed. It doesn't mean you're taking an iron supplement for the rest of your life. It doesn't mean you're taking, a vitamin D supplement for the rest of your life. It means while you're addressing something, you need to fill this gap with a supplement. And then hopefully you can fill it with food and then let that supplement go, if that makes sense. So I typically will recommend different supplements for my clients if they're in different stages, whatever, after seeing, a full on assessment and diet uh, food journal to see what they're actually eating.
Mhm.
Um, because a lot of times, the other thing is most vitamins, most micronutrients are water soluble, which means if you take a vitamin C supplement and your body doesn't actually need it, you're literally flushing your money down the toilet. It's going to come out in your urine. And that, I mean, you're just wasting your money. So I'd rather, you know, whereas if you're eating an orange, you're not just getting vitamin C, you're getting fiber and you're getting a whole other host of nutrients that your body is going to use. So it's much more beneficial to use the whole food than it is a supplement, unless you're really missing those pieces. I personally don't eat animal products, so I take a supplement that has 8 different vitamins and nutrients in it, like B12. It has a little bit of vitamin D, to balance that out, because you can't find vitamin B12 in plants. And typically people are lower in other things. And I don't expect to take that forever.
Right.
It's
right.
This stage of life right now, I need a little extra boost. I need to fill some gaps because I've noticed some things are kind of off. So let's take this for a little while, bring it back into balance with food, and then let the supplement go.
Okay. No, that's great. And that's a great thing, because I think, right, there's so many, like, I'm just thinking of, if you Google that you're feeling a certain way, they'll talk about all these like things you could be low in, and you might be, or you might not be. But kind of like realizing that and seeing that through with food in that way. You talked a little bit, or you mentioned the gut micro, what is it? Gut micro
microbiome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I hear this a lot, and I know other people have to be hearing this a lot. Can you kind of like sort of do like a layman's version of what, or laywoman's version of what that is?
Yeah. So basically, your gut is full of bacteria and other microbes that break down fiber, basically. That's in the very simplest terms. So when you're eating a potato, it has some fibers that your body can't absorb. So those fibers end up in your gut, and your bacteria in your gut breaks it down and uses it to fuel itself, right? To fuel the other microbes in there. Within the gut, there's also a lining, right? It's, sealed, or should be. It isn't usually. This is when, when there's not enough fiber in the gut, when there's not enough variety of fiber in the gut, then the bacteria in there gets weaker. It gets kind of slower. It gets unbalanced, because there's like good gut bacteria, and there's like not so good gut bacteria. So we want more good than bad. If there's not enough fiber, there's not enough good. And that leads to, not enough to kind of fill that lining to make sure it's sealed, which leads to what we call like leaky gut, right? So that means that basically, like, it should be nice and sealed, and it gets a little like holy, little permeable, and that can release some toxins. It can release food particles. And since so much of your bodily functionings come from your gut, right? And if that is out of balance, then your hormones are going to be off. You're going to be seeing inflammation. This is like, if I see inflammation, if I see food sensitivities, multiple food sensitivities, like the first place we go is the gut, because that's where it's all coming from. So the absolute best way to have a healthier gut is to eat a variety of plants, a wide variety of plants. This can look like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, seeds, nuts, legumes, all of those things, like basically anything but animals, is plants, right? So I tell my clients, this scares a lot of people, sorry, 30 to 40 different plants each week. A red bell pepper is different from a green bell pepper. That counts as 2 plants, right? So like, once you kind of start looking at it, it doesn't actually feel like that much. But that's just the best way to have a healthier gut. And that fixes so many problems. It fixes so much. It fixes acne, it fixes hormonal issues, it can fix inflammation. Absolutely. It can start to reverse or heal some autoimmune issues. I mean, it's basically like the foundation, right, of your body. And all you need to do is give it some fiber.
Mhm.
And then it's pretty much working on its own.
Yeah. That's a really interesting, like 30 to 40 different plants a week. Because I think, one of the things I was thinking of is picky eaters, right? And
Mhm.
so, people who are eating vegetables, but are eating the same, maybe five, if,
Yeah.
maybe less even. Um, and so I think, it's really interesting. And I know I personally, my husband and I have been on a healthy and a weight loss journey. And that's definitely something we've been trying to be more cognizant of. And so, uh, but I do think that it's very easy to fall into the trap of the same kind
Oh, yeah.
of vegetables. What ways or what suggestions would you have to add in some different options? In a way that still feels doable in a world where
Yeah.
we might be balancing a bunch of other things, right? And
Yeah.
don't have all the time in the world to, focus on what we're
Yeah.
eating.
I think it's really easy to have a base. So say we do like broccoli, tofu, and rice pretty regularly in our house. My kids love it. They're all about it. And it's like, cool, this is easy. But that's only three things, right?
Mhm.
So then I always look at, okay, what can I add? Like, what can I put on top of this? So can I put some like sesame seeds? Can I sprinkle some of this like dried nori mix onto my vegetables? Can I put some like almond slivers on it? Can I add some herbs? Can I put some fresh basil or fresh mint or something else on there? Can I top it with some kimchi or some sauerkraut? Probiotic foods are so great for your gut and just everything. Um, so it's really like I start with a base. I have like a protein, a veggie, and I know what I'm going to make with that. And then it's okay, like what kind of seeds can I add? What kind of nuts can I add? We always keep kimchi and sauerkraut in the fridge because it's easy. Maybe I toss some olives on. And it comes with like trial and error, right? Like I didn't start like this. And I find a lot of joy in like looking through cookbooks, recipe books, like get ideas. So maybe I don't
Mhm.
actually follow what's on the recipe, but it's like, oh, right, I can make this. I can make this meal with, these five things and then like add a couple things on top.
Mhm.
Again, those like seeds and nuts and herbs are so easy to just add on after the fact. I actually have like on the front page of my website, you can download a free plant-based meal plan that has 30 to 40 plants in it. So if anyone needs like some inspiration,
Mhm. Right.
that's a good place to start and just see what that looks like. See what it
Right.
looks like for you.
Right. Okay. No, that's a great thing. Now I know, like, right, this is an ongoing nationwide program. Problem is, we have people who are low income, might be on food stamps, and or might be in areas of like food deserts,
Mhm.
where it's a lot harder to get to things. Do you have any suggestions of, trying to adhere to these things which we know are healthier within guidelines and limitations that might prevent some of the same access
Yeah.
to that?
Yeah. So a really great base that most of the world lives off of is rice and beans.
Mm.
So rice and beans is a great base, a great option, very accessible, very cheap. If you're doing canned beans or if you're going to soak, your own, whatever route, rice, again, pretty inexpensive, pretty accessible. And then, what can I add on top? And if I have access to, some um, frozen food. I think people overlook frozen food a lot, and it's actually frozen produce can actually be more fresh than the stuff you find in the fresh section.
Mhm.
That's because it's been flash frozen. and packaged right away. So when you flash freeze it, you're not losing any nutrients. As soon as you pick something off a bush or a tree or plant or whatever, it starts to lose its nutrient value. So the faster you eat it, the better it is for you. So actually frozen foods can actually be healthier than, the fresh produce, right? And more accessible, typically less expensive than, your fresh foods. So like leaning on some frozen foods, leaning on, a bag of mixed vegetables. I keep pretty much all the time, keep a bag of mixed, like stir fry vegetables in my freezer, like all the time, for those days when it's like, okay, I don't know what I'm making. I'm going to put some like rice and beans out and then cook up these frozen vegetables, because it's easy, it's quick, it's very cost effective to get, a lot of bang for your buck there.
Right. Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah. And frozen is definitely a way to do that in a much cheaper way. And sort of you talking about some things you always have on hand. I totally concur and I totally agree. Like, right. There's always some things I have on hand.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's cauliflower rice, right? Like I just feel like I can add that in and do that anywhere, right? And
Yeah.
it's a thing I can sneak into stuff, or I can just use as like, an actual real base where you can see that. So yeah, for sure. Do you have suggestions on like ways to cook that, really bring out more nutrients and more benefits?
Yeah. So there's a few different things. So if you are one of those like picky eaters who does, I didn't eat vegetables till I was like out of college, like didn't eat vegetables at all. So the way I started eating more vegetables was to roast them. I roast vegetables like really hot, like basically they turn into like crispy, like,
Mhm.
you know, like I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but they're like almost like French fries, but they're like broccoli French fries. They're very crispy. That releases more of the sugars. So carbs are vegetables, right? Vegetables are carbohydrates for the most part, with a ton of micronutrients inside. This is why we need to stop being scared of carbs. Carbs turn into sugar, right? In your body. Your body needs sugar. It's glucose. Your brain thrives on sugar alone. Like we need it. And when you are roasting vegetables, it releases a lot of those sugars to make the food taste a little better, right? So that's one thing. Um, Another thing is when you're using like garlic and onions and anything like in that family, is to chop it and then let it rest for about 10 minutes before you cook it. This kind of helps release more of the nutrients in there. It gives you more bang for your buck. Yeah, you're still going to get the benefits of garlic if you just toss it in right away, but it's going to be like exponentially better if you're chopping and stopping.
Mhm.
Another thing is you're typically going to get more nutrient value from foods that are raw, from plants that are raw. So like pretty easy to go with like raw fruit, right? We're not typically cooking a lot of our fruits, so that's pretty easy. A lot of people might have issues digesting some raw vegetables. So this is where like training your gut kind of comes to the front. Like we need to make sure that it's functioning properly. It has a good balance of all that bacteria we talked about, so that it can handle digesting raw foods, raw vegetables. And then like to make it taste, I don't like raw vegetables. I'm not a fan. So like if I'm gonna have raw vegetables, I'm gonna put it in a smoothie, right? I'm gonna put it in a
Mhm.
smoothie with some blueberries or some raspberries, maybe some nut butter to kind of like make it taste better. I think lettuce for the most part tastes like dirt. And I eat a ton of it every day. So like there's a balance, right?
Right.
But it's finding what you actually enjoy eating. Um, and that's good for your body.
Mhm.
I don't enjoy eating a plate of plain spinach, but I'll enjoy it in a smoothie, or I'll enjoy it cooked with a bunch of garlic. Um, sorry, I kind of got away from the topic, from the question of cooking
No,
foods. But yeah, I mean, not cooking foods is going to be the best way to get the most nutrients.
right.
Um, and if your stomach and your gut are a little, not quite there yet, then cook it,
Mhm.
at least steam it, um, to kind of do some of the work for your body.
Right. Okay. No, that's great. Those are all great suggestions. And I think it's always good to have some, fairly easy ways of doing it because I think that kind of intimidates a lot of people. Is there one like, particular recipe or something that you would really recommend in the case of pregnancy loss, or even I imagine just regular postpartum, even in
Mhm.
a, whatever a normal childbirth looks like. But, is there anything that you would like particularly recommend?
Um, I love things that are easy on the body and warming. So like some soups, right? Or stews that are like really, really cooked. They have lots of vegetables in them, lots of, maybe there's some lentils or something to kind of bring it some more heft. But something nice and warming, right? Um, and then also a congee, which is that like rice pudding basically. Um, so easy. I
Mhm.
remember after my fourth, I just made a giant bowl and kept it in the fridge and then had some like mushroom broth. And I would just grab some of that, pour some mushroom broth on, heat it up, eat it. It's very filling and very easy on your body to digest and break down when you're in this kind of stage of everything shifting really quickly, either regular postpartum or after a pregnancy loss. Like so many things in your body are shifting, and it's really nice to have a handful of foods that are easy on the body. So some congee is really great, stews are really great, soups, things like that, that your body doesn't have to work as much for to
Mhm.
get the nutrients out of.
Okay. Yeah, great. No, it's really awesome. And we've talked a little, we've talked mostly about cooking and doing things, but for families who might prefer or just that's the option is to eat out, what kind of recommendations would you give?
So I love Mexican restaurants. There's usually you can find, you know, a little Mexican restaurant anywhere.
Mhm.
Usually it's not the most expensive option to go out to. And you can find a ton of plants there. Usually I'll recommend to like say no to the cheese and the sour cream that comes on whatever. But like ordering fajitas, it comes with a ton of veggies. It comes with, a side of guac. It comes with rice and beans. It's a very well-rounded meal, and easy to access pretty much anywhere.
Right. Yeah. Okay. No, that's a great, yeah. And I think, like you said, that's a lot of vegetables you can get and, a lot of different things,
Yeah.
for doing that. Yeah, for sure. Um, and so, I know we're talking a lot mostly about pregnancy loss and postpartum and that recovery. But I know a lot of people, to whether it's to get pregnant or to stay pregnant, or just to maintain a healthy pregnancy, there's a lot of focus on that. And I know from just my personal experience of going through infertility and everything, right? Like you can find every diet plan under the sun that tells you this is the fertility miracle and this is that,
Mhm.
and most of them contradict each other, and so it gets really kind of confusing. But what recommendations would you have for those kind of cases where it's more about like I want this to be a pregnancy and a healthy pregnancy, and to do that?
Yeah. So, um, quite a few things. I'm trying to come up with like a couple easy takeaways. Um, One, making sure that you're eating enough, right? A lot of us are stuck in this, um, you know, society tells us we need to look a certain way and we restrict. And a lot of times that doesn't allow us to get pregnant, right? If you're severely underweight, or even not severely, but just underweight. And that can be different for everyone. I don't really talk about weight in my practice because it's not a measure of health. Um, so depending
I feel like
on
I
where
just want to
you
say like an amen to that, because I feel like that is such an important key
yeah.
issue that we need to realize. And that unfortunately, I think like the whole world, including medical professionals, I think
Oh
are
yeah.
very largely, focused on weight loss is the key to everything. And,
Yeah.
there are
And weight loss can also be due to
skinny,
infertility. So,
unhealthy people, and there is,
oh yeah,
heavy, very healthy people. Like it just, runs the
absolutely.
gamut. And so, yeah. So I just wanted to stop you because I think that's like such a huge thing. And I feel like once I finally like realized that, how incredibly like eye-opening that was.
Yeah.
And um yeah, and really that like our focus, I kind of mentioned our journey, but our focus was really on being healthier, right? We have a 10-month-old, and when I was realizing, several months ago when when I started on this and then my husband joined me, was we just weren't feeling healthy and like able to be the best parents we could be. And so that was really our journey. And then for both of us, me even faster, but weight has just come off
Hmm.
as a result. But like really honestly, it's about being healthy and
Yeah.
having the energy and everything. But
Yeah.
I didn't mean to go down that way, but I just really wanted to highlight that, like that as a huge takeaway of just like weight and health are not necessarily synonymous. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. I would rather look at so many other factors before looking at someone's weight. Like,
mhm,
and most of my clients are virtual, with at these days, obviously, which is kind of nice because I don't even really see all of them.
mhm,
It's like, yeah, we do video sessions, but I don't know your weight.
right.
Like, and unless it's an issue for you, I don't need to know it. Like,
Mhm,
not 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 necessary for me to perform my job.
right.
Um, which is really different for most people to come into. Um, okay, what were we talking about? I totally got sidetracked.
I got sidetracked too. Oh, just like
Um,
kind of like the best things to
oh
do
yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
healthy pregnancy and all that.
Okay. Yeah. So making sure you're eating enough, and not like with my fourth, um, I was like very small. So I started to eat, a lot more, increase my overall caloric intake. And also like, okay, I'm going to put eggs on a lot of things. Eggs, so supportive. Lots of choline in there. We talk about like folate a lot when we talk about, healthy pregnancies, fertility, all that. Um, choline is just as important. It's not talked about as much. You can get all your choline from a couple eggs a week. Very easy, and very necessary for a healthy pregnancy. Um, and then like folate, of course, is another one. You can get a lot of folate from food. It's found in pretty much every prenatal vitamin out there. So it's pretty, once you're looking for it, you're getting it. Um, and then finding a good balance between like fat, protein, carbs, right? I don't like count macros or anything. I think that's very stressful. And we need to make sure we're having a good balance. So it's not like, okay, well, I'm having, you know, 80% of my diet is carbs and 15 is protein. And then like, I'm not having enough fat, right? That's a very extreme example.
Mhm.
Most people don't at all eat like that. Um, but it's a balance. And I'm not like, there's no hard and fast answer of like, okay, you need to have, 45% of your calories from, carbs and 25 from fat. And there are different balances for different people. And it's all about like what, it has to do with your genetics. It has to do with your body composition. It has to do with your activity levels, and your overall goals, right? And in general, for a healthy pregnancy and getting pregnant and staying pregnant, making sure that you're having enough healthy fats. Again, a lot of us are scared of fats. A lot of us are scared of carbs. Um, and there's no reason to be. Food is food. Food is food. We don't label foods. here I don't say like, okay, that cookie is bad, but that smoothie is good. Like food is food. It's neutral. And it's only your perception of it. And there's actually some research to show that, if you eat a cookie in like full enjoyment and relaxation and like, yes, I am loving this cookie, you're going to end up absorbing more nutrients from it than if you were eating the cookie and like, oh, I hate myself. Why am I eating this cookie? I'm so bad. Um, so you can make a cookie healthier just by relaxing and not
Yeah.
vilifying a cookie.
Right.
And that works with any food. But so looking at food as neutral and being like, okay, well, I know I need some healthy fats, so I'm going to drop some avocados and some nuts on this. And I know that, maybe I didn't have enough protein today. So like, let's make sure I'm getting enough protein. Just being mindful about like where your food's coming from, especially in those kind of three categories. Carbs are easy, right? We know, well, maybe we don't know. Fruits and vegetables are carbs. We need a lot of those. And then, your breads, your starches, all that stuff. I mean, most things have a good amount of carbohydrates in them, which is why they fuel most of our body. I mean, our bodies run on carbohydrates, and a lot of our functioning during pregnancy and while trying to have a baby, a lot of those systems thrive on carbohydrates. So, to use energy in our bodies, most of the time when we're using energy, it's not just exercising, it's like digestion and, making sure your heart is pumping and making sure your brain is working, muscle repair, all of those things. A lot is going on in your body when you're shifting into a pregnancy. And in order to fuel a lot of those actions, you need carbohydrates. You need healthy fats to help absorb the nutrients from those carbohydrates. It's all, it's all a balance. And that feels very vague without like numbers, but
Right.
I hesitate giving like, okay, this much should be this. But I like to use like a hand diagram. So like this much of protein, right? Like palm of your hand of protein at every is like a serving, right? A fist full of vegetables should be on your plate every meal. Fistful of vegetables. It's like roughly the size of a bell pepper. But you can also see that like my fist is very much smaller than my husband's fist. And that gives a better example of like what a balance should look like, because it's different for every person.
Right.
And then half of that fist should be your like more starchier carbohydrates. So if you're having like rice or quinoa or potatoes, something like that, or bread, that's like half your fist. And then for fat, I use like the top of your thumb if it's in a liquid form, right? So if it's like oil or butter, things like that, like this much, it's not much. And usually when trying to conceive during pregnancy, postpartum, you need a little more fat. So this is where it's like, okay, let's sprinkle on some more seeds and nuts. Let's put some, a couple slices of avocado on this. Let's, cook it in a little more cooking fat or something, just to give it a little extra boost.
Right. Makes sense. Makes sense. No, that's all great. And I love that. And it, really, it sounds like a theme is sort of the deprivation is not key and it's balancing, right? And, it's funny, your example about the cookie, I was thinking of, I've been on, kind of clean eating and, being, good and all of that. And my birthday was a little over a month ago. And my husband said, well, what do you want? And, do you want to do anything special? Do you want anything? And, in a COVID world, right, doing something special is very limited to what we can do. One of the things I said is like, we had a local bakery near us that makes amazing chocolate donuts. And I was like, I want donuts for breakfast. Like that was my thing. And honestly, they tasted so amazing, like so much so than, years of having eaten them, because I really like focused on that and had absolutely no regrets in a way that I had never previously. And, still felt really great about everything, because, it was my little treat, my thing that I needed. And yeah, so I get that. And I think all of that is very true, that, we're humans still at the end of the day, right? We're not going to eat 100%, the way
Right.
we always, maybe should. I hate the word should, but, that kind of thing. So yeah. So I know we're getting close to our time, but, what kind of general rules would you've shared so much with us so far, but what kind of takeaways would you want to do? And if you want to talk a little bit about more specifically, like the work you do, if anybody was interested in reaching out.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess like biggest takeaways would be like, we didn't talk about this, but drink a lot of water, stay hydrated. I have mine's green, because it has some like chlorophyll drops in it. But yeah, drink a lot of water, like drink a ton of water, more than you think you need.
Mhm.
Um, Eat more plants, again, like 30 to 40 a week. Um, it sounds like a lot, but it's totally doable. Eat more plants, eat less animal products. I didn't touch on this, but like meat stays in your body for like up to 72 hours while it tries to be worked through the system, basically. And that takes a lot of energy from the rest of your body, the rest of your functioning. So like eat a little less animal products, maybe do like one meal a day that's totally plant-based, maybe do one day, or you can go all in, whatever feels comfortable for you. Um, and then let's see, plants, water, less animals. And then, yeah, being mindful of that balance and like checking your plate or your bowl to make sure that you have that good balance. Like, oh, yeah, this is mostly vegetables. I have my little bit of protein, I have my little bit of fat, I have some other carbs in there. Um, and finding that balance that really works for you. And especially for anyone who has like younger kids, um, neutralizing food, right? Like we put if we're having dessert, we put it on the plate with dinner. And it's like, okay, here's your dinner. Not a big deal. It's not like, oh, you need to eat your vegetables before you eat your cookie, or like, oh, this is a celebration. It's so special that you get to have a cookie, or like, oh, broccoli is so, so good for you. Eat that broccoli. It's like neutralize food. Like nothing's good or bad. And kids pick up on that so fast. And then it's ingrained in them for the rest of their lives that like, this is good, this is bad. And I have to eat my vegetables before I eat my cookie. But
Mhm.
really, it's food is food and food is neutral. Food doesn't come with, a good or bad label. It's all what we're placing on it. We place that label on it. So neutralizing food makes a huge difference. Like you said with your, chocolate donut, like it tastes really, really good. It tastes so much better when you're not vilifying it.
Right.
Um, and that goes with anything. So really, really making food a kind of, and that doesn't mean you can't enjoy food, right? Like I still do like a little happy dance when I get like a really good food. I have these sweet potato fries from a restaurant down the street that I absolutely love. And I'm like, yes, I'm so excited to eat these. And like you can celebrate food and like enjoy food and have fun with food without attaching labels to it.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
huge, it makes a huge shift.
Right. Yeah. No, that's huge. And I have a son who will eat anything. And I make his food, and I just kind of have some fun with it. It
Yeah.
just whatever I do, and I do these combos. In fact, I don't even remember what the combo was, but I was making something. My mom was over and she said, "What are you making?" And I told her the combo, and she goes, "Well, that's an interesting combo." I'm like, I had a little bit of this, I had a little bit of that, and I just kind of made it. And he ate it. So yeah, definitely I can relate that that's something really powerful and helpful. So well, I want to thank you so much for taking your time and doing this. And I feel like I learned so much, and I hope others learn a lot. And what is the best way to reach you if
Yeah.
wanting to?
Yeah. So you can find me, my website is thefoodtherapistms.com. There's a lot of free resources on there. Like I said, like meal plans, that kind of stuff. Um, and that's also where you can find all of my work. And also on social media, on Instagram, pretty active on there. Also at the food therapist MS. So
Great.
pretty easy to find.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This was such a wonderful and helpful presentation and discussion. And thank you for joining us. And thank you for watching. And we hope to see you again soon. Thanks.
Thanks for having me.